Hey, this is Oleksiyenko, and today I want to show you yet another masterpiece that was played by Alphazero, and in fact it inspires me a lot. Whenever I watch these games that you can see on my channel, I get inspired to play such chess myself because it doesn't seem that illogical or difficult to do. I hope you'll enjoy the game. So let's see what happened. So remind you, this is Alphazero Stockfish 8 match, which was played last year. Stockfish was playing on supercomputer, so there was no need to check it with the engine. So Stockfish wasn't blundering. So Alphazero managed to outplay it using, I would say, superhuman chess, which we actually, from time to time, we all can play, and we can all learn from this game. So let's see. Knight f3, knight f6, c4, c5. Actually, I'm gonna try explaining every single move that was played by Alphazero from human point of view. I think all of them, or at least most of them, make human sense to me. Let's see. Developing the knight, putting a pawn in the center. Developing the knight. Stockfish is doing the same. Now it's time to fianchetto. Alphazero in most of its games is fianchettoing the bishops on g2. Apparently it is a good idea. The bishop would control a significant amount of central key squares and putting enormous pressure on black's position and keep white's king safe. So fianchettoing the bishop is a good idea. e5. So you already see that Stockfish, it's a theoretical move, nothing to worry about here, but already a weakness appeared. Alphazero notes it. Developing the bishop, bishop e7, d3. White could have castled, it wouldn't make much of a difference. d6 and castle. So white just quickly castles. h6. Black loses important tempo, but in close positions usually one tempo is not that significant, and it has a valid idea. It stops bishop g5 or knight g5 because Stockfish is about to play bishop e6, which makes a lot of sense. And now, since the position is closed, Alphazero decides that now we can actually maneuver a little bit and goes knight to e1, which is a typical maneuver for these kind of pawn structures, opening the bishop, controlling the weak square on d5, and black would have hard time pushing d5 himself. Knight goes to e1. In many lines, this knight is going like this to an outpost on d5, which makes sense, but surprisingly, this is not what happened in this particular game. You'll see in a second why. So bishop e6 was played, and now f4. Fantastic strong move. Put another pawn in the center. When I say the center, I refer to, let's call it accelerated center. Usually this is the center, right? These four squares. But accelerated center includes these four. Basically, these 8 squares are very critical for the opening phase and middle game, actually. In the end game, maybe it's not that significant, but opening and middle game, this is the key squares. You should put pawns and pieces there. So f4. And now white wants to push f5, thus stopping the d5, and f5 would be very unpleasant. So Stockfish takes, and now in case white goes f5, e5 square would become weak. But if you see that what has changed, white still has 4 pawns in the center, and black has only 2, or close to the center. F pawn is not going anywhere. Queen d7, and white goes e4. Logical move. White puts yet another pawn in the center. Yeah, it weakens this square, but now d5 is never happening, and white will have pawn majority in the center till the end of the game, and you'll see how Alphazero is going to use it. And this square is not that particularly weak because only one knight can go there, and we can control it with knight f3, knight c2, bishop e3, knight e2. We can take care of that square. Bishop g4, forcing move. Queen d2. White doesn't want to pin himself, just moving the queen away, and maybe a note for future reference. Queen doesn't like to be bothered. That is why Alphazero chooses this particular square. It looks like stopping the bishop, but on this square the queen will not be bothered by knight d4, unlike on c2 or b3. So the queen just moved away. Long castle. And now now this position actually could look a little bit dangerous because white's king is quite exposed usually, right? The g file is open, the g pawn is gone. Usually that's a bad sign, but white controls the center so strongly and significantly that black's attack is not going anywhere, and you'll see in a second. So white continues with the typical plan. What is the plan now for white? d4 doesn't make too much sense to me. White has, with different castles, you have to attack the king. How can white attack the king? In order to attack the king, you have to open the file. How can you open the file? b4 is the plan. It seems impossible at the moment, but with careful preparation, white can manage that, and black cannot really stop. Rook b1. White is slowly preparing the b4 breakthrough. So what does black do? Bishop h3. Well, you may say that this bishop is a bad one because there's a pawn in front of it, but that's not true. The bishop is bad if the pawn is fixed on its square. It is not fixed at any... My apologies. At any moment, this pawn can go to e5 and open up the diagonal. Very typically, this would happen h3, b4, b-file opens, b7's pawn becomes weak, and then at some crucial moment, e5 bishop joins the attack and black is collapsing. So bishop h3 is a good move. First of all, it exchanges a potentially powerful bishop, and it removes one more defender. Well, the next particular move, I cannot explain like why now, that's my question is. Now Alphazero decided to go king h1, but it has deep positional meaning behind it. Why would you move the king away? Well, what's wrong with it? The point being, the king on h1 stays away from potentially open g-file. In case knight appears on d4, there would be no possible checks and forks to the king. The king is basically much safer on h1, although there are plenty of other moves, like a3 was perfectly playable. Here, just continuing with the plan, but Alphazero decides to play this move. King h1, rook h to g8, black is preparing his breakthrough with g5, and now white goes a3, preparing the plan b4 that we talked about. Bishop takes g2, knight takes g2, g5. So, what is about to happen right now? The g-file is about to open unless white does something about it. What can white do about it? That's right, white goes f5. Yeah, it is weakening the e5 square, but it's much, much more important to keep the files closed when it comes to king safety. No files will get open now. g-file stays closed. e5 square is weak, but we can take care of it, or actually we can ignore it. The point is, the no open files in front of my king, well, and here b4 is coming, and for sure a file would open up. Black goes g4, tries to push pawns. Black is about to do something like this, right? So here Alphazero decides to improve his worst placed piece, which is the bishop. I think b4 was quite playable here, but Alphazero, before going to action with b4, decides to improve this bishop. How can you improve it? Well, there's a pawn hanging here, there's a perfectly good diagonal here. So queen d1, opening the bishop. Black goes g3, and now the following move, actually Stockfish doesn't like, but it's excellent strategical decisions. Remember, you're not supposed to let him open any files. I think Stockfish here, if I may check for a second with my Stockfish, Stockfish says b4 or bishop f4. Two moves it is suggesting, and already prefers white. Bishop f4 or b4. Huh. Okay, my computer was busy with calculating. But Alphazero makes a fantastic strategical decision here. Just like previously f5, keeping the files closed, h3, excellent move. Keep the files closed. No counterplay whatsoever is going to happen on the king side. Extremely unusual situation. Usually if the pawn is on g3, the king is about to get mated, but since white controls the center so confidently, the queen cannot join the attack. And I would say go as far as say white is strategically winning already. It's strategically may not be the right word here. Basically, white has a plan here, has an outpost here, and white's king is surprisingly safe, and black has virtually zero counterplay. There's nothing black can do. There's no breakthrough d5. There's no way to get to this pawn on h3. There's nothing happening for black. White would gradually improve the position and win. h5, bishop is being developed to f4. King goes to b8. Now white improves the knight and puts the king in front of the pawn. That's magnificent. Usually the king is the worst defender. Usually the king is the worst blocker the knight is. But knight has much better job to do on d5. And king is doing perfectly fine, holding the pawn, stopping this pawn, no checks whatsoever. white would move all his pieces to the queen side and win now. Rook goes to h8, knight goes to d5, knight goes to amazing outpost, knight to h5. White decides to keep this bishop to control the slightly weak and dark squares in the center, and not to mention knight on h5 is just standing there doing nothing. Black goes bishop f6, and now actually Alphazero had a possibility to win in exchange. So let's say knight x f6, knight x f6, and bishop g5 a pin. A move like queen e7 would just run into knight d5, and basically this pin, you cannot hold this pin. So black would have to give up in exchange and play this position, which is clearly much better for white, but it's not that simple to open the more files, and black does have outposts for his knights, so some fortress chances for black. But Alphazero decides to keep his bishop to have potential for the attack. Knight goes to b5. At first I was like, where is this knight going? But amazing line to support this move. Knight goes to b5, which is usually can be easily kicked away with a6, but Alphazero planned the following. So white is planning to go b4 and claim that this bishop is shooting into empty space, this knight is out of play, and white, all his pieces are in the attack. But what happens after a6? Amazing move, knight to c7. I can rarely see this one happening and working. Rook to c8, and now knight a6. Amazing sacrifice that could have happened, but Stockfish unfortunately calculated this. And after b4, b file is about to open, this diagonal is about to open, the queen is about to join. White's attack is overwhelming, according to Stockfish. So let's come back a little bit. Knight to b5. Stockfish goes bishop d4, choosing a lesser evil, but that pawn on d4. Now white goes b4. The b file is about to open. Black tries to block the position as f6, but it is funny. Just look at this guy and look at this guy. It's just amazing difference. And white, basically everything is winning here. White can just take this knight and just eventually win this pawn on d4. Or white just keeps pushing the pawns on the queen side. a4, rook h7, a5. There's nothing black can do about it. Queen c6, slightly improving the queen. Rook e8, b5, not even opening the file just because this knight is here. b4, queen moves, and after queen c3, this knight has no place to go. And actually, I think Stockfish should have resigned a few moves ago, but it kept playing. There's not much to see here after that. Rook d8, bishop takes d4, cd, queen d4. There's a joke like, my position is, I'm one pawn down, but my position is worse. This is the case for black. White is dominating and white has extra material. So black still has no counterplay. And I would just quickly show how the game ended. No exchanging the queens. And now the central pawns. Remember, white got the center early in the opening. And white kept all the 4 pawns in the center. And now they're gonna crush the opponent. Queen f3. Rook c7, so this is basically desperation. c5 was coming. I don't know why Stockfish was not resigning. Maybe there's an algorithm like you resign if the evaluation is above some number for some time. Okay, there's not... Oh my goodness, this is what Alphazero did. Okay, it's nothing to see here. So, amazing play with 0 computer moves. Every single move made sense. White controls the center, push the b-pawn, close the king side so there's no attack until the very end of the game. Amazing play, and it feels like we all can do it. Well, we can't, but we can definitely learn from this game. You're supposed to control the center. If you have different castles, don't open files for your opponent and open files for yourself. With every move, try to improve your position. With every single move, look, what is my plan? Which pawns do I push? Which piece needs improvement? And if those questions keep circling your mind, you would play a fantastic game, unless there's like a blunder happening, which is not the case with Stockfish games. Although there was one blunder that I mentioned previously on my channel. I hope you enjoyed this game. I hope you learned from this game. And I hope to talk to you in the future. This was Oleksiyenko with you again. Subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends, take good care, and have fun while playing chess. See you!